Hello, friends. I'm proud to give a shout out to our sponsor, the Canadian Legacy Project. Veterans Affairs Canada is very limited in its service offering to veterans, so the Canadian Legacy Project has stepped up to fill the gap. CLP develops and delivers a full suite of free programs for Canadian veterans. CLP celebrates our veterans by offering meaningful support for healing and the transition to civilian life. Homes for Heroes, Business Boot Camp, service dogs, educational bursaries, equine therapy, and more are available through the Canadian Legacy Project. Find out more at CanadianLegacy.org. Hello, all you beautiful souls. Thanks for joining me for another edition of Operation Tango Romeo, the trauma recovery podcast for veterans, first responders, and their families. One of the lanes that I've found myself in is advocacy. And one of the very serious veterans issues that is not being talked about enough is Mefloquine poisoning. So we've talked about it on the show before. I've had Dave Bona on the show, and there's been a lot of strides between Dave Bona, Sean Arnston, and Bruce Given is joining me today to let me know where he's at and what he's up to. He even has a book on the subject. And hopefully this is one that gets shared a lot because it's another example of how veterans are exposed, hurt, driven to suicide in many cases, especially with mefloquine poisoning, and ignored. Called crazy, gaslit by the government. And the problems are just swept under the rug to cover people's butts and are not addressed. The issue of mefloquine poisoning stems all the way back from 1993. And yet here we are, still here, and not having it properly acknowledged since 1993. It was like that with Agent Orange. It was like that on my tour with the PCBs that we were exposed to. Don't know how many people are dead because of cancer, but they pulled all the documents out of our files to destroy them. The documents that we all signed saying, yes, we understand we were exposed to these PCBs and it might kill us from cancer at some point in the future. Well, that was a paper trail that was mostly destroyed. A few of those documents did survive, though. And there was an investigation, in air quotes, and nothing happened. Nobody was held accountable. Nothing happened. All swept under the rug. That is the modus operandi for the military. If there's a problem, sweep it under the rug so that nobody gets into trouble. And welcome to the show, Bruce, so we can talk about this.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
So let's introduce you to the audience a little bit. Tell me about your service.
Well, I originate from St. John, New Brunswick, and when I joined the military, they wanted me to join the Navy. I had no idea, no inkling of crab walking underneath the surface, never mind sloshing around on board deck somewhere. I was a longshoreman prior to joining the forces, so that was a bit of a insider from the recruitment center saying, oh, the Navy's the place for you. No, I joined the Army. I joined in 1977, and I thought I was going RCR. And when I graduated from Cornwallis, they told me, oh, you're going PPCLI. I said, well, what's that? That's the same thing, just happens to be out west. Okay. And if you don't like it, you can ask to rebadge to the RCR, is the term they gave me. I said, fine, and went out to Winnipeg to 2 PPCLI and did my basic training with them. At the end of my basic training, becoming private qualified, I asked for a rebadge to the RCRs. You couldn't ask for a bigger insult to a regiment asking for somebody to transfer to another. So they denied it. I said, fine. I took my release, went back home, went down to the recruiting center. I said, I want to be an RCR. 2 weeks later, I was getting my uniform engaged down in an RCR.
Did you have to do battle school again?
Pardon me?
Did you have to do battle school twice?
School again?
Yeah.
No.
Oh,
I was accepted straight across. Yeah, no, I completed my basic. And actually, one of the more interesting things was that I did security for the Pope in Winnipeg in 78. Or it had to have been 1978. The Pope visited to Winnipeg, and I did security for that. So it was a very interesting start to my career where we did riot control and all kinds of different things as such there. But another avenue of things that highlighted some of my career.
That was in the
So
pre-Pope Mobile days, before
yeah,
before he had the bubble.
yeah, that was before he had the bubble. So I ended up being posted to Germany. When I came back from Germany, I remustered to the engineers, and I have to clarify to everybody, the construction engineers, because every time I tell everybody I remustered to the engineers, oh, you're out breaking up mines? No, 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 no. I was out surveying behind those guys, picking up the mines and building their camps for them. Overseas is what I was doing. I had a tour in Croatia in 92, 93, and a tour in Haiti in 1995, and that's where I got the Mefloquine. And I had another tour in Bosnia, and I spent 6 more months in Sarajevo in 1999. Retired from there. I retired a very broken individual as such. I retired voluntarily, redressed it, and had it turned over to a medical release.
So in Croatia, that was Roto 2 then?
That was in between the I4 and it was Roto between 0 and 1 actually, because 1991 the only people we had in Croatia were officers. There were 78 observer officers in Croatia at the time in 91. And I went in 92, and I think it was February 92. So Roto's in between, it transferred between my Roto and the next Roto between I4 and UNBR4.
Hmm.
Is is the best of my recollection. And believe me, I'm damaged, but I have the certificates and the information to back that up as such there. I have no reason to exaggerate upon my tour and service as such there. I served into my 25th year. Yeah, I served into my 25th year, was hired on as a civilian afterwards. And when I let down my suit of armor, that's when problems started to really come to the surface. I managed to hide a lot of my Mefloquine difficulties while still in uniform, because I still had an urge to serve and a desire to be promoted and carry on up through the chain. I expected to do the 32 years. I wanted to maximize my pension and do well, as I'd seen others before me do.
So
But
I'm sorry, what tour was the Mefloquine exposure?
In Haiti in 1995. So
Yeah.
it became our knowledge from Somalia in 93, and 95 was really, we didn't hear about 93 until 95, and the inquiry in 97 shut down just prior to introducing Mefloquine into the scenario for the inquiry of the Somalia affair, which ended up disbanding the airborne regiment.
Mm-hmm. So for the audience, Mefloquine is an anti-malaria drug, and there was no choice in the matter. You were told to take it, you took it. And tell me about some of the more well-known symptoms of Mefloquine poisoning.
One of the bigger ones is anger. Easy to anger. Sudden mood changes. Oh, calm as a cucumber 1 second and just blowing off the deep end on another, and for not unseen or unknown reasons to anybody around me as such. There's times when I actually am walking and I haven't had a drink since I took Mefloquine, because alcohol seems to exasperate the situations. But as I'm walking with my wife, and she'll find at times that as I'm walking, I'll lean into her as I'm walking and supporting, and that's my balance issues. There's a whole lot of vestibular impairment, they call it there. So amongst that, the mood changes, anger, depression is huge, suicidal ideation has come and gone. Bowel disorder. Oh my goodness, I got IBS immediately, and that was something I couldn't hide. When I come back from Haiti, they sent me to NDMC there. At that time, there was a hospital in Ottawa. Searched, scoped, and screened me out there and said, oh, I had traveler's diarrhea. Well, here it is more than 30 years later, and I still have traveler's diarrhea. One of the best things that Dave Bonus ordered me out on was taking a probiotic for that situation there, and I don't know why I never heard that from my doctor. So that helped alleviate the symptoms, but it's one of those things that you're always looking for a washroom. You can't rely on your guts to maintain what it is that you eat. I only eat twice a day. I was taking the same digestive pill from 1995 onwards to maintain some of my digestion system, to hold some of the nutrients in my body, because there's almost immediate flushes after eating. I don't maintain a meal.
Now, is there any rhyme or reason about how many doses it takes to be poisoned by Mefloquine, or can it happen the very first time you take it?
It can happen on the very first time taken, and there have people who've taken it and were given loading doses prior to a deployment who never deployed, who still have those same symptoms, and it varies on the severity between individuals. And for some of us, it's raw, it's next best thing to Crohn's, and for some other people, it's just a bloating and a gas sort of thing. Some people tell me they only have headaches per se, but I think a lot of people are really good at hiding what it is that they have and not admitting to it.
On
Like I
our
said, to
tour,
carry on with my, sorry.
oh, it's okay. So I was in Croatia on the summer tour of '94, and they had Mefloquine there, and I remember the medic. It wasn't mandatory. They said, "Well, we gave this out in Somalia and stuff. If it's an anti-malaria, if anybody wants it, here it is." And I popped one, and I had problems immediately after. And I only did it once because I remember one of the guys, he says, "Why? There's no malaria here. Why in the hell would you take something if you didn't have to take it?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's a good point." So I never did it twice, but I did take it the one time and instantly had troubles that, and I still don't know if it was the mefloquine or if it was um, PTSD, because several major events happened right around the same time. So it's tough to track it, and that's one of the challenges with all the different brain injuries. So again, for the audience, mefloquine causes an encephalitis, so holes in your brain. Like it actually um, causes brain damage. The mefloquine, if you're poisoned by it, not everybody's poisoned that takes it. And PTSD is similar, and so is CTE, and so is TBIs. It all
OSIs, and I actually heard it more frequently referred to as a potentially a chemical brain injury.
well, it all boils down to it's brain damage,
Definitely.
and that brain damage is tough to deal with, and the symptoms all line up. So it doesn't matter if it was a traumatic brain injury, so like concussion trauma, mefloquine poisoning, PTSD. You, when you put the diagnostics on it, they look very, very similar. Like over half the diagnostic markers line up. So it's the same across the board. And then, so it's really hard to tell which lane you're in for diagnostic. Like for my symptoms, God only knows how many are from concussion. So CTE or TBI, who knows? And is mefloquine in the mix? I don't know. And it's really, really tough to know. So, from what you have found out, is there a conclusive way to say, like, is there some diagnostic way to say, yes, this is mefloquine, not something else?
No, not unless, as I understand it, under an autopsy, when they can examine and by microscoping into your brainstem, and apparently it leaves some battery acid type wear and tear on the exterior of your brainstem, which controls a lot of these problems, like the wet gut issue. And I don't know too many people that are volunteering to have their brain examined as such, but I know there's a survey out there for it.
Yeah. Well, some people are actually now donating their brains to science for CTE. I know that's a thing. But so how does one know that they have mefloquine poisoning then? How do they know it's not from some of the all the other things that could happen to you while in service?
That's something we're still trying to determine. There's something called the DMS5 out there that the psychological field uses for the PTSD issues and such, that hasn't have an entry in it relating to mefloquine yet. It hasn't been updated. Dr. Remington Nevin is the world's leading authority on it, and I believe he's working on it.
So that makes it difficult when making mefloquine claims, because is it the mefloquine, or like that's really difficult, Bruce.
My advice to my doctor has been that if you can't eliminate this particular symptom to this particular attribute of a issue, then it could still potentially relate to mefloquine, could it not? So I leave doubt in their mind as such there, and hopefully, and somebody's looking into it and researching it, and is why we're advocating to have some studies and surveys done on the subject.
What have you found to be the best therapies so far, or talking to other people that suffer from it? What works, if anything?
Well, a big thing was reconnecting back within your community, and those that associate and can relate, even if they haven't had it, can relate to your service as such. I found a big thing from volunteering, helping others, help myself. Uh, I am presently on my third round, 3 different years by 3 different doctors for neurofeedback treatments to my brain as an electronic stimulation to the brain, and I found it has put me on a plateau, a level sort of thing, whereas I'm usually up and down and around the roller coaster train wreck of a elevator ride that seems to have plateaued a lot through this neurofeedback treatment. And the neurofeedback treatment, unfortunately, I find that they have set it pre-standards of number of sessions. The standard is 20. I've been given 40 twice now, and I'm on near 20 on this third round I'm doing of it here. And they've mapped my brain in between the sessions there, and it's like a heat waves, autocardiogram. There's 2 different interpretations of that brainwave brain mapping that they do. And I had the present doctor looking after me look back to a brain mapping of 2019, and he says he can see improvement in my frontal lobes. However, he still sees a deterioration in the back lobes of my brain, and that's what they're trying to stimulate for, either overreaction or underreaction in my brain.
Well, that's interesting. So is that the same as the magnets?
No, not the same as magnets at all, although I'm familiar with it, and I've tried that on my neck for the brainstem issue there, and I only did it fleetingly, so couldn't say there was any actual results to that or not. But there's different types of neurofeedback treatment, and there's Loretta neurofeedback treatment is what Dave Bona really advocates for, and it's something that's very deep tissue into the brain as to where they locate it and how much emphasis they put on the electrolysis that's going into the brain, and there's different standards of it, and everybody will tell you that they're a professional within their area of expertise, and I'm not sure that they crisscross together more, or should. Is what I'm encouraging them to do and to look at as I talk to them. And it's different from talk therapy, but talk therapy is still darn important and should be included as such.
Well, from the internal numbers at the OSI clinic, the efficacy of talk therapy alone is like between 12 and 16%. And when you go the psych route on meds, SSRIs have never been shown to do anything beyond the placebo effect. So it's tough. That's why I do the show, Bruce. As I try to find everything that I can, every modality of healing, and bring it to the show, because I just figure there's got to be a better mousetrap. There has to be, and I've found several that work better. But despite all the people out there with their silver bullet claims, I haven't found one. Not one that I can put my name on and say this is the silver bullet. This will fix you for sure. I haven't found that. I don't know if that exists, and I think part of the challenge is is the difficulty in diagnosis. It's so brutal, and I don't know with these different brain scans if they can tell the difference between one injury or the other, or what the solution is to that. But it is tough, which is why you kind of got to throw the kitchen sink at it. And it's not just a one-off. What I have found is that it's a lifestyle change. You have to 100% take the bull by the horns and control as much of your life with routine as possible. And what you said about community and purpose and volunteering, I talk about that all the darn time. It's huge, whether that be if that's working for you because of Mefloquine, that's great. But as post-traumatic stress injury, that is an injury that causes disconnection, and disconnection is what causes the pain and the isolation. So if it's an injury of disconnection, then the antidote is connection, and that connection is through a community that you feel welcome in, that you feel like you're making contributions. And the volunteer community is absolutely wonderful. The Veterans Association is got to be the most impressive veterans organization that I know of. There's a lot of great ones out there. My sponsors are the Canadian Legacy Project. Fantastic. The good work that they do. I'll always be a fan of the Veterans Association, though. And knowing that you are giving to the community that you love, that's a big, big deal.
It was helpful to me initially. Well, I was in a good place. I started as uh, taking the lead on as the operations manager for the Veterans Association here in Edmonton in 2020. I did it for 2 years, and so I listened to hundreds and hundreds of veterans, their issues, their problems, tried to help them, give them direction, financial, SISIP, back, food. And if you came to us looking for food, you needed a whole lot more in the first place. I was in a position myself where I was homeless for 3 years after my second divorce. I was in a deep, dark place for 15 years. It was only through another serious attempt to suicide that I had connected with a therapist who really turned me around and saved my life. He's retired now. He's an author of fictional work, but his son was a police officer, and he was contracted on the base in Wainwright as a psychologist there on the base. Every Friday he went in there from Camrose for 2 years, and he connected with me, and he told me directly, he says, Veterans Affairs has been neglecting you. Well, all these years later, at that time, yes, perhaps they were, but I was neglecting myself and I wasn't communicative. I was in a deep, dark place. I would rather tell you to F off than to talk to you in the first place, back for many, many years. So I realize now that a lot of this was self-inflicted. But it wasn't really, insofar as that was chemically inflicted by that mefloquine per se. So it's out of my control. Somebody asked me yesterday, what is holding me back from getting out and around the community as such? And I told them, it's complicated. It's not just one thing. It's a combination of so many. There's 33 items on that blue chart list, and the only one that doesn't relate to mefloquine is flashbacks. And that's directly a PTSD issue.
Really articulating the impact that it has on our lives is challenging. I just did a reassessment for my PTSD claim, and actually putting it on paper, how it's affected my entire life. Uh, it's not easy. It's not easy looking at it, facing it, um, and actually vocalizing the depth of the impact on our lives. It's painful. It's difficult. Just writing that letter, I broke into tears at least twice, because like I got all that behind me now, you know. But my entire life revolves around managing PTSD symptoms. My whole family revolves around me, like it's like as if I was a narcissist or something, which of course I'm not, but um, it's significant what you have to do in order to be okay. And being okay for me is just staying level. And staying level is an entire life shift. I mean, it is where we live. It's our physical location. It is my daily routine. It's the communities that I'm a part of. For me, it's arm wrestling. Because that works for me. Makes me have to lift weights in order to be able to be competitive, and it's one of the best things that we can do for ourselves is weightlifting. It's way outperforms SSRIs, and so I do it because I have to. It's a medication, and it makes me feel good because I was like, okay, I'm 54 and I'm still strong. Cool. And as long as my arms stay healthy, I'm going to keep going for as long as I can. I'll probably be in my 70s competing, and there are guys doing it in their 70s. And
I know a couple.
yeah, it's amazing. But at the end of the day, stay as strong as I can for as long as I can. And but the point is that it's work. There is no magic pill. There's no magic bullet. It's work, and it's dedication to yourself to be the best you that you can be. Because if you're not, well, how do you get to? It's tough to be a good father. It's tough to be a good dad. or even a good friend if you don't look after yourself first. That's one of the challenges that many of us have because we're those that serve. We are the fall on the sword people. We are the ones that sacrifice ourselves. So looking after ourselves seems counterintuitive, seems selfish, but it's not selfish. It's required. It's essential. You have to look after yourself first, or you're no good to nobody.
That's true. Very. I just had a conversation with my son here a week ago, there, maybe a couple of weeks ago, because I've been running around doing some book signings and talks about Mefloquine and the situation as such. And I did a Can of Connect book signing here a few weeks ago. And I mentioned to somebody near the end of the conversation that I know now, and I didn't realize it then, but with my first wife and my children, I only have children from my first wife, I realized that I had pushed them away. And although it was devastating to all of us, in part and parcel, I've come to the realization that it was in protection of them at the same time, because there needed to be some distance between them and I, and myself and anyone else, because as much as I was suicidal, I was quite capable. And if you were interfering in my attempt to have that suicide or whatever, I think I was homicidal at the same time. And when I mentioned that in the conversation, there was a few people in the room that kind of went, I can relate that the damage is done. There was some protectionism in us, even though there was a severance in the relationship and our mindset and understanding and comprehension and the whole 9 yards, that I moved on and away from them to protect them, because I knew if I had stayed with them and gotten worse in the condition my condition was in, they may have been casualties alongside myself with those statistics that we're still fighting against, that are still happening as such.
Two of the hardest things for any of us to say out loud, and both are massive barriers to healing, is one, I need help. So many just never get there. They never find the strength to admit that they need help. The second is that they are the problem.
Yeah.
And I think that both of those, which are where you got to swallow your ego, swallow your pride, and go, yeah, I need help. I am the problem. It takes tremendous courage that unfortunately so many people never find. They never find that courage. So you being opening and saying what you just said, that's how you save lives, Bruce. By being open and saying the truth about your experience. That's what I've heard called lending courage. That's how you get rid of stigma, because stigma kills. And the more we can have open and honest conversations, and I've seen it. I've seen, because I've opened up about various topics, other people will tell me things that they've never told anybody in their entire life, that they can't even tell themselves, but they'll tell me because because I'll tell my story and I'll be very open about it. Because why are we not open about it? Why would we be ashamed? We didn't do anything wrong. Getting injured was not our fault. It's not your fault that you were poisoned by mefloquine. So why is there shame in the symptoms?
Because it's not a visible wound. It's an invisible wound, and you can't see it. And I sat beside Brock Blazechuk, who's missing a leg, and stood up to the Prime Minister, who told us we're asking for more than they could give. He slapped me on the leg. He slapped me on my leg in one of my early meetings with him, and said, "You know what, Bruce?" He says, "I feel bad for you guys because you can see my visible wounds as such, but we can't see your invisible wounds and what eats at you and what eats at all of us as such that suffer in this manner." And writing has been really good to get it down and out there and expanded the conversation. Mm-hmm. Conversations we're not having. It's the hardest conversation to have, to say, I need help, and can you help me? And the bigger problem I found is that, I'm sorry, I don't have time to listen for you. I don't have time for you. Can we do this later? No, take a minute or two, listen to the individual and reschedule if that's what you have to do. But there's so many times I feel I've been turned down myself where somebody said, no, can we talk about this later? Well, later could have been too late for me at that time.
It's brilliant. The hardest things to say are the most important things to say. 100%. And writing, tell me about the writing process for you. How was that therapeutic, do you think?
Same as telling a story, but more so because I got into the details and I got to rehash it and over again in the editing process for my book anyway. I started writing the book when I gave up my tenure as the administrator for the Veterans Association. What was I going to do next? That occupied my day, all day, day and night, in and out. And actually, that's part of the problem, that it became a hindrance insofar as I was attempting to look after everybody else, but wasn't looking after myself or my family. So I had an opportunity to reestablish in those aspects of things there. So I said, I still want to write this story, and it wasn't the story I wanted to write, because it actually comes about by circumstances, because it was what ails me day to day. Mm-hmm. And I see it ailing others. I was at within the food bank. I made so many connections that they offered a writing course from something called the War Story Society from Calgary. And they ended up doing a project, and they're not connected to the food bank, and they're not political. It's a relationship of somebody who was just interested in hearing about and knowing about the military, who knew nothing about us. And a philanthropist, I guess you would call them. And so they started up the War Story Society. They collected a bunch of war stories from people, individuals talking about the first time they shaved in the military, the first time they fired a weapon, different things. And I ended up writing a story from their encouragement in the course that I took with them. And it's going to be about my first time flying with helicopters. And I had a hell of a lot of helicopter rides within my career. So there's a lot to the story. But at any rate, it was a good story. It was another good connection. We're hearing stories from different veterans in different situations and in all kinds of scenarios. So that was helpful, but it happens once a month. And between the month intervention of the course, it kind of loses a step, because you've moved on to other things and you're coming across at the end of the month time frame to reconnect and get the story and move on. The other program I went with was through the True Patriot Love Foundation. It was operated by Joanne Sullivan, and it happened in 6-week chunks, every week, 2-hour Zoom sessions, and within those 2 hours, we all broke out into different rooms and had discussions, came back together again, told little stories. I told the first story with them about the pause for the cause, and that within our training, we learned all our drill commands and things on the movement numbering system of 1, 2, 3, 1. The action, the command's given on the 1, the first action, everybody pauses on the 2, 3 to get everybody together to finalize that action. 1, 2, 3, 1, a pause for the cause. I said, you know what, we could apply that to our lives today if we listen to somebody for that second or minute, take a moment to pause and reflect upon our response, and then respond, as opposed to immediately spitting something back at somebody, like somebody asking me why I need a service dog. What is my issue? What is the license for? What does it do for me? Well, you have no business asking me that, but I'll tell you, do you come up and ask somebody with their walker or their stroller or their wheelchair if you can pet it or why they need it? You know, there needs to be an attitude adjustment put out there to the general public, and we train in public with my service dog training that I'm within. But the general public still doesn't have an understanding, and we don't have a coordination across there's those provincial trade barriers. The certification in Alberta isn't recognized in BC or New Brunswick per se, and there's the problems with transportation on the ferries and leaving those service dogs within your vehicles as opposed to being able to take them up on the deck with you. So that's another issue that I'm pushing with our government as such. And Relations in Alberta actually has a good service dog recognition and program that I'm still asking to get intertwined with the other provinces and aligned with something across the country, something like the CNI dogs.
Do you think that military service dogs need national or international certification? Is that the direction we should be going?
I think so, yeah.
One of the challenges, and I've spoken about this before, with service animals, people don't know the difference between
them and a therapy animal.
Yeah, like an emotional support animal, which could be anything, and a service dog. I mean, there is no comparison. There's no training required to be a emotional support animal. It's just an animal that's there. And
It's not there for medical tasks, is where the main difference is. Medical tasks. I don't think a therapy dog is trained to come up and give me chest compressions to wake me up in the middle of the night from my nightmare. It can't turn on and off a light switch. It won't press the opening door for the mall. It won't pick something up off the ground for me, sort of thing. Retrieve me. It doesn't give me pressure sensitivity that freaking grounds me to them, to ground me from the situation going on around me. There's a huge involvement that's not perceived as what it really is. Education and awareness.
a properly trained service dog is like a super dog. I mean, between $20,000 and $40,000 is what it costs to train one. It's so much work, and thank you for listing off some of the things that they do that you just wouldn't expect. But because of emotional support dogs or any other animal, people don't know the difference. And so there's a lot of ignorance out there. You're right. And even guys like Mike Rude with Spark, even though they're kind of famous, he runs into trouble all the time. And sometimes it's just the attitude of the person. And if he runs into somebody with kind of a crappy, cranky attitude, like, yeah, sure, that's a service dog. Let's see a certificate. If people ask it that way, because they've had 9 people that week try to scam with a fake service dog, at a hotel. And then he's the 10th guy that comes in with a real service dog. I mean, of course, people are going to be skeptical and not think that it's legit. I would love to put a vest on my dogs and take them anywhere that I want to go, but I would never do that because I know the impact that would have. And I've been asked, is that a service dog? I'm like, not exactly. No, it's not a service dog. Do my dogs help me? Yeah. Yeah. They do. Like in crowds and whatnot. If I happen to have my dogs with me, and they usually are with me, that does help me, but they're not service dogs.
Well, I gotta back up on another thing about the service dog issue is that, and that's $40,000 cost for service dogs. My service dog is my own dog that I introduced to service dog training. It's a failed security dog, actually. My son worked for a security company here in Edmonton that had security dogs, and been asking for years to get a puppy. Never got a puppy. Finally, at one year, they asked me if I would take a retirement dog. I said, sure. I took it. When it passed on, that gave me the opening for a puppy. So I got a German Shepherd that came from England, and 10 months into the security training, they said it's not going to become a security dog. It was too timid. It had no aggression. Well, that's a good thing for me. So my son said, would you like to be interested in taking this dog? Sure, I took the dog. 3 years later, I bump into John Dugas from Courageous Companions, and I start talking about service dog training because I'm expecting to have my dog have a litter of pups, and I want to take one of the pups and make it a service dog. Well, what kind of dog is it? Was the first question. Shepherd. Well, we're not too keen on shepherds, and I owned a shepherd, and they have a reputation like Malinois, like pit bulls, like Rottweilers. They're seen as an aggressive security guard dog, herding animal that's not conductive to PTSD issues in particular, or service dog training. I said, okay. I said, how old are they when you cut them off for testing for the training? He told me 4 years of age. Well, my dog's only 3. Will you test her? I said, sure. So we went into a Home Depot, walked around, he banged and dropped things off the counter to see the reaction, so on and so forth. He brought his dog with him. And the only thing that really interrupted me throughout the process of him testing her was that he asked a stranger to come over and pet my dog. Didn't ask me, just asked the stranger. So that was an affront, I thought, to me initially. When you're asking somebody to touch my dog and I didn't ask them, they didn't ask me. Where was the permission in this area? It was a bit of a psychological point for me at that moment. So this employee came over and patted my dog, asked if it was okay. I said, yes, her name's Lola. She shake her paw with you and give her a treat sort of thing, and away they went. I was enduring whatever it took to do this test. When the test was done, she had flying colors and was accepted into the program for service dog training. So I didn't pay $10,000 or $20,000 for that dog. I paid $1 for that dog. when I did the service dog training, when I got into the contract, now there's different contracts with different service dog trainers, and some of them want thousands of dollars a year in a contract to train them. Courageous Companions had one requirement, $1,000 one time after they pass the public accessibility test. So I promote that widely to say that you don't have to spend $20,000 or $40,000 on a service dog. You can train your own service dog. However, unfortunately, they are shying away from training certain breeds, and one of them is shepherds, and mine happens to be grandfathered into the cause. So there is a way of saving thousands of dollars for an organization that was once a 2-year contract, $6,000 1 year, $5,000. You're paying $500 a month to do this training with them, and we can train as often as we want, as frequently as we want. And they're public training sessions, so we are educating the public in the malls and the stores that we go to within the St. Albert communities where we train.
A friend of mine is training his own service dog right now, and it's a challenge. There's there's a lot of barriers, and finding an outfit that will support you in training your own service dog is a bit of a challenge. I guess it's kind of like homeschooling. Like, what makes you think that you'll be a good teacher? But at the end of the day, homeschooling results are really good. They score higher across the board. Like, it's a good thing. It just seems to work out. And maybe it's the same with dog training. I don't know. I train my dogs for hunting, and I get them to a fairly high level. It's you get what you put into it, right? You get out what you put in, but not everybody can do it. So, yeah, it's interesting. But if somebody's willing to, if there's a good programs and you just simply follow the program, this is what you do. This is A, B, C. These are the steps. It's easy to screw it up, but as long as there's tests that they're passing, and I mean, why not?
Yeah.
So where, as far as legislation, what's the legislation that was achieved with Mefloquine through, I think Sean Arnston was one of the bigger parts of that. Sean and Mike Grube.
It was Sean and Mike there that they persuaded their local MLA at the time there, Peter Guthrie, who was from Airdrie Cochrane, to bring up a motion into the legislature for recognizing Mefloquine and our situation with it. So Peter Guthrie came to the legislature on 14th of March 2022. Dave Bone, myself, Mike Grube, Sean Armstrong, and a den mother was there. And Mike had a service dog, which he got in shit for not having on his leash by the legislature security, saying, it still has to be on the leash. Doesn't matter if it's a security dog. I mean, a service dog. So he came in. So the 5 of us were in the gallery, and there was only half a dozen other people in the gallery because COVID was still fading away at that point in time. So it was one of the newer moments in the legislature where there was some attendance in the gallery, and we were invited to the gallery for this motion. The presentation brought up the fact that our service injury had caused this problems with us, and Mr. Guthrie, I want to repeat the context of his motion because Mr. Guthrie moved, be it resolved that the Legislative Assembly urged the government to A, support research to effects of anti-malaria drug Mefloquine, sold under the brand name Lariam, B, work with the federal government and other provincial governments to encourage the adoption of safe anti-malarial treatments, and express support for Canadian veterans suffering with the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder resulting from the use of Mefloquine. And I'll end that quote there. So he asked for 3 things: is support research and adverse effects of the anti-malarial drug. No research is going on anywhere in the country. None that I'm aware of or can find out of, and I've researched it.
So this is in the provincial legislature. At least it gives some credibility. It gives something. But Veterans Affairs is federal. So
that's right.
Was it progress?
Well, that's why I'm pursuing it, because there wasn't progress. It was an info session. It was it was that public awareness. And I'm not saying that it wasn't a good effort, but it
Well,
hadn't
it's
gone
better than
anywhere.
nothing, but not by much.
No, so I've been pursuing them. I send them an email every 6 months and say, hey, how's it going? Is there any movement on this motion? Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Is there any movement on the motion?
Yeah.
Finally, Mr. Guthrie came back to me last June, I think it was, and said, you know, nothing's happening. Every time he tries to talk to somebody about it, he gets a door slammed in his face. And I said, that's fortunate for you. You've only been having that door slammed in your face for 3 years. I've been having it slammed in my face for 30 years. So I'm upset about this, and I will chew your ass out until we get some resolve and some organization. It was great that you heard us and listened to us. Now he's moved on in his political position as such. He's interior minister or industrial minister or something now. So he's not in the position where he was to give us the focus that he was given it before. But I've refocused his focus on that focus because I had an interaction with, then giving my book to MLA Nicole Guthrie. And she's the local.
Here, hold up your book for the video audience. Hold that book up to the camera again here.
Sorry.
Okay,
Delegate
so
and Disappear.
Delegate and Disappear by Bruce Given. Is that available on Amazon?
It's available everywhere. It's on Amazon, yes. As a matter of fact, I've seen it on eBay being sold, used copies being sold, and I never gave the rights to China, but it's available in China too.
Well, fantastic, and it's a great title, and that's a great look. Delegate and Disappear by Bruce Given. Go on to Amazon right now, and buy a copy for yourself, please, and bring a copy to your member of parliament.
I gave one to a member of parliament last night.
Which MP?
It's the St. Albert MP, because I went to it was the 100th anniversary of the Legion, and they had a veterans dinner there last night. And Matthew Cullen, I think his name is there. He's a minister for, member of parliament for St. Albert. Cooper's his name.
Have you had any luck with the feds at all? As that gives you any hope?
Yeah, actually, from Saskatchewan, member of parliament Kathy Wagenthal. She has been with us and attended each and every one of our Mefloquine rallies since 2017. She's available, and I've talked to her personally on the phone, through Facebook, through emails. She's been quite receptive, and she has spoken on our behalf on this subject in parliament. I've heard her. I've seen the post.
I've met her. When I testified in Ottawa, she was one of the people that was part of the committee, the Standing Committee of Veterans Affairs. Wouldn't mind having her on the show. I should reach out to her. There'd be a good conversation there.
She might be willing to do that.
Any movement with, say, the veteran ombudsman, or ombud, she calls him herself?
No, and the other person I've really been pushing this issue on, because it's federal, is Blake Richards. I've met him at a couple of functions in the last couple of years, and in the process of writing my book, and he has a copy of my book. And
the challenge with Blake is that he's the shadow minister, not the minister. So the shadow government, I mean, they can saber rattle, but that's about it. They don't have any actual power. So they can question the government, they can form committees, but they can't make decisions. They can't actually do anything. And that's the challenge. And I saw it when I was testifying in Ottawa about veterans being offered to be killed. Veterans Affairs saying, "Well, we can't help you, but we can kill you. Would you like help with us killing you?" With MAID, and so crazy that people couldn't believe it, but it's true. It happened. Yeah. I've been in 4 different documentaries about it. That happened.
I actually know somebody who took their life because of it, in that some way, shape, or form, insofar as that he was, Ken Chan is his name. Mm-hmm. And December of 2019, well, it started, we'll say, I did my first Mefloquine rally at the legislature in 2019 in September. In December, they were deliberating MAID in the legislature, and Ken Chan wanted MAID, wasn't being offered it, so he shot himself on the steps of the legislature. And when I went to ask to have my rally there again the next year in 2020, I was denied. I was told there was a conflicting event going on at the same time. There was none. I'm sure the conflicting event was that they didn't want veterans on the legislature potentially having the same situation happen again. And believe me, at that point in time, I was potentially the person to do that.
Have you had any coverage from the news? Like, is one news agency been more courteous to you or more curious about the issue than others?
None. And I've sent my book to them, and I've had direction and connections who said, don't just send it to Global, send it to the program manager, and here's his name. And so I send it to the program manager. And the same thing with radio stations, CBC. I've been around pushing this hard to try and get some traction on it because we don't get media attention. We're starving for media attention. We don't have a budget. We don't have fundraising. Actually, there is some coordination with Veterans House Canada in Ottawa there that does some fundraising for us for the rallies. But apart from the rallies, there is nothing other than us individual advocates going out and saying, hi, here we are. And I know Dave Bone is working on something now to redraw that media attention. But media attention is minuscule because they're always concerned and it's not the story of the day.
I would send a copy of your book to Brian Passafume at the National Post. He's a friend of mine, and that would be, he'd probably be pretty receptive. He's had me on the front page a couple of times in the National Post.
Okay.
Brian Passafume. Very nice guy.
So in my passing the book to Nicole, I said Peter Guthrie had dropped the ball, or so I think he did. And she said, well, I think he did too. So she gave me a connection. She had a contact with him. She contacted him. They contacted me. I had a Zoom meeting with just the three of them, myself, Nicole, and Peter, and discussed that motion going forward. He told me that there was some funding potentially available for some research. Well, then he also in the same conversation told me that the government will not seek studies and research on our behalf, that we have to petition the government to do that research and studies in order for something to happen, that they have to be approached. They're just not going to pull it out of the air. And because something I said to them makes a study happen, that they tell me, okay, so now I'm asking, how do we do this? What I did end up getting was I'm petitioning the government to put some action into this motion. And in that ask, I have been aligned with a member of the caucus from the legislature to formally formulate that petition. Now, not everybody, but several people are telling me I'm going about this the wrong way because this is provincial, where we're trying to get it federal. And I'm telling you that they're all connected. Where did these federal members of parliament come from? They initially were provincial legislature, generally speaking, or municipal. So there is a connection.
MLAs don't typically become MPs. That's not true.
Pardon me?
MLAs don't become MPs. That doesn't happen.
But they're all connected through their parties in that chain of command. NDP.
Not really. Only the NDP party, and they are alone in that. The NDP, they're all the same party, whether it's provincial or federal, but they're the only ones.
Yeah, well, that's the one who's giving us attention. So if they're giving us attention, they're the ones I'm going to give my attention to because they're listening to me. So that's somebody I can speak to, and potentially this can balloon beyond that, is my hope.
Well, you know what? Whatever ears are open, great. But at the end of the day, if you're not in government, I mean, even the official opposition is hamstrung. You know, they don't have any teeth. It's our system does not work very well that way. And we have, especially when you have a minority government, which means the majority doesn't like you, but somehow the minority government works well. Yeah, there's pros and cons to every system. You know, half of me likes that there's 4 or 5 different parties in the House, and then the other part of me thinks maybe 2 parties is actually better, like it is in the States. You know, maybe, I don't know. It's a mess either way, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to achieve is the people having a voice. That's what the House of Commons is supposed to be. People having a voice. And in cases, especially with veterans issues, where it's going to be accountability and paying out claims and actually shelling out some dough for research to find better therapies and support. It's an uphill battle because we're asking them to find reasons to spend money on veterans. They'll spend money on transgender studies in Nigeria. They'll throw millions at that. But when it comes to veterans, for some reason, we're the bottom of the list, and unless it's Remembrance Day and they need a photo op.
From Victor's games.
Yeah. Photo ops.
Yeah.
But how they actually treat us when push comes to shove. You always hear the thank you for your service and everything else. But when push comes to shove, you get people like Christine Gauthier, who is just now getting a wheelchair ramp that VAC said that they were going to do, and then they didn't. And then they said they were going to do it, and then they didn't. And then they refused to do it outright. So we had it done privately.
We do plenty of that within the Veterans Association as such. We're embarrassing the hell out of them for doing what we do. And that's why they put a crimp on us, actually. They've expanded, given us money to expand into neighboring provinces without opening an actual food bank. We have a service officer type position within Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and British Columbia that's being run out of Calgary from the Veterans Association Food Bank. And it's actually expanded to Northwest Territories just this last week. So we've expanded into 5 provinces, but we're not allowed to open. We have 4 locations open within the province, but we have 4 satellite locations insofar as a service officer now in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, BC, and Northwest Territories. So we've expanded huge, but the government who gave us that grant to Veterans Affairs, whoever it was, said, don't open another office, but offer the services to help those in need of housing and assistance as such.
And yet people think that the Legion is a veterans organization. And it's not.
No, this has nothing to do with the Legion whatsoever.
Yeah, I know.
I told you I was at a dinner at the Legion last night, and they said, Bruce, I'm sorry, we're still trying to remove that item in their constitution that tells them that they can't donate to a food bank. The reason they can't donate to a food bank and why we started up is because they closed their food bank in Calgary. And that's how we started up the Veterans Association's food bank, to fill that void when they closed down. And in their closing down, they said they don't want to give any money to any food banks and put it in their bylaws or whatever.
Well, yeah, I was in the middle of it right in the beginning, and my very first show I ever had was with Dave Howard, and it's just unbelievable. It is unbelievable how the infighting of the different veterans organizations, but the Legion does do some good. The beginning of my healing journey, it started with a service officer at Northwest Command in Calgary, and forever grateful. They got the ball rolling for me. They helped me out. Even paid some bills for me out of the Poppy Fund because I was in a bad way. Like I was in trouble, and they helped me out, and I'll never say otherwise, but the individual branches are really hit and miss. Some actually support the veteran community. The rest are civilian clubs that want to keep it to themselves and pretend that
I've experienced both
and pretend that it's a veterans club, but it's not, and the stolen valor that happens at these legions is over the top. Like you can't go into a legion without running into somebody that's stolen valor, and I never know what to do when I run into it. It's just awkward. I've never called anybody out to their face, even though when I'm goddamn sure that they're fakers, there's one guy in the local Legion around here that says he's British SAS, and there's no way in hell. There's no way in hell he was SAS. No way, and, but what do you do?
Yeah.
So the Legion doesn't do itself any favors, and it needs reform, but it won't reform. It won't. It's just going to keep doing the same thing until there's no branches left. I think I don't think there's even 10 years left in the Legion. I don't think so.
No, it's a sad situation. And my uncle from Korea, who lived in the Legion when he came back from Korea, and I actually was duty NCO on the base when I get the message of his passing. And he bought me my first Legion membership when I was 18. But when I went to Germany at 20, there was no Legion connection within Germany at that point in time. There is now, I think. So I let it expire, and I could never have the courage to tell him that I let it expire and never rejoined. And I've had both good and bad experiences with the Legion. When I was desperate and homeless and in need of help, the Legion, I went to the Legion in a small town. They said, here's $300 in gift cards, but that's all we can do for you. They fed me for a month, but no connection, no help, no aid, no services, which was a big lead in for my taking on the leadership of the Veterans Association here in Edmonton. Was that bad experience from the Legion. But I've had plenty of good ones. And like I said, I was there last night. And again, somebody from the Legion, the president, was apologizing to me, saying, I'm sorry, we're still not able to give you more than $1,000 off the floor because that doesn't have to come from the poppy funds. But if we want to give you $5,000 or $10,000 or more, they're still restricted in doing it. And they're still fighting to correct that.
Yeah, I don't know what the solution is other than little food banks open up in the Legions that are fueled by the Veterans Association, and do it the other way around. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, they do support us and collect for us.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah. Well, some branches do anyway.
Yeah.
So what's next for you, Bruce, as far as Mefloquine awareness and trying to get some traction, get some change?
Well, to tell you the truth, and everybody talks about the healing process that you go to a clinic for massage therapy, psychological therapy, or whatever, they're offering you body, mind, and soul care for you, is what they're promoting. Do you get body, mind, and soul treatment when you go to these therapy places? No. I might get body treatment. I might get a massage. I might get a Band-Aid. I might get some medication, but nobody is treating my soul. So what I'm pursuing now, and from a recommendation from Dave Bona, is I've connected with a trauma therapist who I have an appointment with here on Friday. And I'm hoping that he says he can help me treat my soul. From Dave's recommendation, he said that 3-hour session with their trauma therapist was better than 10 years of talk therapy. We talked about that earlier, being beneficial to a point. Well, I still think it's inclusive and necessary, but there are alternatives, so I'm chasing down this trauma therapy to go back and heal myself from childhood trauma, potentially, is what maybe a sticking point in my adult life, because so many things happen and the sponge assumes so much more that things get pushed back to the wayside and memories and such, and we don't have to dig into details, but we need to clarify and resolve some of the issues that are within my soul, not necessarily, again, something you can see, like the invisible wounds. I'm pursuing the neurofeedback treatment. I'm pursuing the politicians, and like I said, both federally and provincially. And working towards we're hoping that our next rally may happen in Moncton this year in September. So we're going to do a convoy type gathering from the west here all the way down to Moncton, New Brunswick for the rally in September.
Fantastic. And hold up your book one more time. Let's give it a plug. So that's Delegate and Disappear by Bruce Given. Please pick up a copy from Amazon or wherever books are sold, I suppose, right away. And are they in bookstores, those ones?
They're in bookstores, but a lot of bookstores you might have to order them if they're not in stock. It's being published by Ingram Books. Friesen Press was the publisher, but Ingram Books has it contracted out to some 50,000 retailers in Canada, USA, UK, and Australia. And interestingly enough,
Bruce.
Australia was the first response I got from anybody on the book, because it came out in Australia and people got it on Remembrance Day, November 11th of 2024. It ended up on the bookshelves in Australia, and I immediately got a couple of emails and texts from particularly spouses of veterans who have taken their lives, and they were looking for some comprehension and some understanding of what may have happened, perhaps, and some of those details may be found within this book. Because I generalize things, although I give my perspective, there's a general perspective as well.
Outstanding job. It is. I've published 2 books, but they were self-published. Actually, having a publisher is not easy. And
this is still self-published through Friesen Press.
But it's in bookstores anyway. That's an amazing job. Well done.
Yeah. I plan to write another. I'm on a couple more writing courses. I told you I did one with War Stories in Calgary. True Patriot Love I just finished a second intentional writing story session with them. And I plan on writing a book about my tour in Germany back in the 1980s, actually. 4.5 years in Germany. Green Grenades and Green Ambassadors. That's the title I'm leaning towards on that one. That's the book I originally wanted to write.
Well, thanks for being on, for joining me today, Bruce. And I'll be sending a copy of this episode to a few people, and we'll just keep pushing. That's all we can do.
Appreciate it.
All right. Stay in the line, Bruce. You're listening to Operation Tango Romeo, the trauma recovery podcast for veterans, first responders, and their families. Please support this show, help save a life. Like, comment, subscribe, and share like the sugar bear, because sharing is caring.